My superpower is engineering. I've been a roboticist almost all my life now. I think engineering is just as creative as the arts. Engineers, we solve problems. It impacts the world. It makes a difference. Without IEEE, I don't think I would have the network that I have. Anyone can get involved with IEEE USA at any time. There's an immense amount of value for anyone at any career stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our first IEEE USA Livestream webinar of the year, Job Search Strategies for 2022. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. IEEE USA's goal is to create programming that's valuable, relevant, and of interest to you. As such, we will be sending a short survey to all registrants after this event and would love your feedback. We value your opinions and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and share your thoughts. Joining us today is Elizabeth Lyons, who has worked with us many times in the past as well. Elizabeth is a career coach specializing in IT and engineering for 20 years and is also the author of I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me, and Hear Us Roar, Unapologetic Women Leading in Corporate America. Without further ado, I will now pass it off to our presenter. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hey, thanks so much, Jonathan. Hi, everybody at IEEE. Boy, I have worked with this group for probably over 20 years. Some of you are familiar with my material or my books. Really happy to be back and talking about job seeking in 2022. So let's dive right in. Next slide, please. So what we're going to cover today is the job trends that you're going to see in 2022. And we're going to touch a little bit about how the world has changed. I also want to touch on the biggest mistakes that people make in their job search this year. It's common. I think if you're looking for a job, highly likely you're going to find one, but there's still a couple of things that I want to warn you of that you might want to look out for. And then the other thing I want to touch on is actually having a career strategy and not just worried about taking another job or finding the remote position or making $25,000 more a year, or whatever it is that you're after, really thinking strategically about your career so that you're able to move it forward and make a good choice. Next slide, please. So this is a slide about me. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I am a 3-time author. The very first book I wrote was called Recession Proof Yourself. The second one is called I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me. And boy, is that book doing well now. And then the third book I wrote is called Hear Us Roar, Unapologetic Women Leading in Corporate America. I am a career coach, and I specialize with people in IT, executive positions, or engineers that are looking for their next opportunity. So if you're considering a coach, feel free to drop me a line. Many of you I've already worked with before or have met tangentially, which is kind of cool. I'm glad to be back. And then the other piece I want to touch on is, when I started coaching, over 20 years ago, there was no coaches. Like literally there was no coaches. And I started with engineers that had a hard time within job search. And now there's like plethora of coaches, many of them. I think shortly stated, what makes me a little different is I've been in this world a lot of years. My coaching practice actually has a process to get you from A to B. But the thing that makes me really unique is I'm still in the game. And so I now lead a global talent acquisition team, and we focus only on enterprise technology roles. And so every day I am still front lines with vice presidents, directors, talking about their hiring needs, and then running to my team, making sure we're delivering the right talent. And I'm very much upfront and in the data around why candidates leave, who's looking, why are they looking, when's the next recession, what's really going on. What you'll find with some coaches is they may not be as cutting edge or still in the trenches, and I still am. And that's really why I'm here today, is to kind of offer to you what I have seen and kind of what's coming up so that you can have a very sharp, crisp job search and ultimately get the position that's right for you. Next slide. So I wanted to touch on some statistics before we roll deeper into this. They have started to rebrand and rename this next year called the Great Onboarding. So it's a different twist. It's really not about everybody leaving and the Great Resignation. It's really about people starting in all these new companies. And so on this slide, we've got some pretty shocking statistics. We are looking at, 52% of the workforce is now looking for another job. And the thing that they're not saying in here that I think is important is these are people that are currently working. There's a majority that maybe have been laid off, but there's a majority that are passively seeking or currently working. And that's kind of all over the board. We're seeing candidates that have been with their companies 10, 15, 20 years that are now putting their resume out there. And we're also seeing people that literally took a job change during the pandemic, not happy, and now they're starting to go back out there and look again. So that's what's going to be the bulk of the other candidates around you. In terms of the demographic, I thought this was a good shout out here. They're really what we would consider mid-level-ish, right? So 50% of the total job seekers are between 25 and 44. Once you get 35 to 44, you're getting into that mid-level candidate. How we would define that is somebody that's maybe 5 to 7 years, even 7 to 10 years. Now we're getting towards senior level skill set. So that's the demographic of who's looking. And then 62% of managers are actually looking, and 72% of managers of multiple departments. So what I'm saying here is probably your boss or your boss's boss is also starting to look for a new job in the next coming months. Another statistic I ran across, which is more centralized to the region, over 50% of the people in Dallas, Texas are actually looking for another job. Number one reason is they're looking for remote opportunities. Number two reason is actually better compensation. And number three would fall into company culture. So what we're trying to paint the picture of is what you're experiencing, and then go back to the data. And the big picture here is, yes, there's a lot of job seekers out there, more so than even 6 months or a year ago. And they are starting to look, and this is kind of the demographic in the area that they're looking in. The general consensus, and one of the number one reasons they're looking is for remote opportunities. A lot of complaints around, I just really don't have any connection with this company. I don't care for the culture. And to be fair, it's hard to really feel connected and be a part of a culture if you are already a remote employee, because you're not going to the office and it's a different flavor. So it's interesting how still unsettled we all are after the pandemic in terms of what's going to make us satisfied with work. In recession and in bull markets, the pendulum always swings, right? And so, when it's a bull market and it's very robust, what you find is, fewer candidates, lots of opportunities. Now we have lots of candidates looking, but extremely selective in the opportunities. And for the first time in all the years I've done this, truly the employees for real have the power. And corporate America and business in general is having to respond to that, because the longer this goes on, the more painful it is for them, between attrition and also not being able to fill the roles with good talent. Next slide, please. So I want you all, kind of thinking about that, rolling in the back of your head as you're thinking about your own job search and so forth. So here's some other pieces about the profile of the job seeker. So this is the motivation in terms of why they look. And this is also, everybody that's in interviews with you, they're saying all these things. And that's what I'm trying to share with you so that you're mindful of it. Again, remote work, it's especially in the IT and engineering, that whole talent pool is forcing employers to go that way, minimally 2 days in the office, the rest of the time remote. There's a lot of demand for better pay and better benefits. And honestly, those demands will probably be satisfied the next 6 months to a year. The models are all still showing that recession will hit next year. This year looks pretty stable-ish, but recession definitely is going to hit next year. So if there is demand for better pay or better benefits, and if you're looking for another job, you'll probably find that. There's a big piece, and I'm sure you've seen it on LinkedIn and other articles and other places. There's all this stuff around mental health and burnout. And, it's not fluff anymore. It's not HR fluff. It's really people are tired. And some people that are working remote are working too many hours. And so they are looking for a culture that's going to help them to balance that and have some reasonable amount of, frankly, email flow. That would be a good example, or reasonable amount of timelines on projects. I have known myself personally, 3 different people very good friends of mine, professionals in the last year that did that job change during the pandemic, made a pile of money more, frankly, like we're talking 30-40% increase on their salaries, got the remote job, and in 1 year's time said, I'm bored, I don't want to do this anymore. And that really kind of shocked me, because I thought, and one of them asked me what I thought, and I was like, just be careful, because if you really enjoy taking your kids to school and having that flexibility and being able to have a life, and you're bored, that tells me you can do your job comfortably and you have some extra time left over. Are you sure you want to blow all that up and go someplace else and make even more money, and then not have that extra freedom in terms of your time and what you want to do in terms of your life? And so it was interesting. Two of them went off and worked for Amazon. And one of them went off and did something completely in another space within payments. But it was interesting to see how that all turned out. But the consensus and the complaint was, where is the career path? I can do this job. This isn't exciting. And so then that really boils down to, it was more than just money to me anyway, right? And so I think that's something that you want to think about too in your own job search. Company culture. Somebody mentioned this. It was a CIO that actually mentioned this on a call a few weeks ago that I was on. And he said, really concerned about company culture. When I did a survey of 200 of my direct reports, only 2 of them said they wanted to be back in the office. So that's an overwhelming no, we don't want to be back in the office. But my concern is, like, you can quit a job here and just close your laptop and open it up, another laptop, and be working someplace else. And so there really isn't a feeling of loyalty sometimes, or company culture, or that togetherness. And unless you report to a really good leader, and even then remote, you're still going to be a little bit handicapped. So company culture is another piece that's driving people to look, but they're unable to really describe what is that and what is that feeling that they're chasing, that they're trying to get satisfied. Next slide. Okay, so I always like to tell you what you can kind of expect. I always like to kind of get some idea of what I'm going to expect before I go do it. Ironically enough, I will share all of this with you as well. I've had my coaching practice for over 20 years. It's something I've always had and always done. And I always had a full-time gig within corporate America. I myself left a company after a decade, and it was a big deal for me to leave there. And it actually took me 6 months to pull the resume together and apply. And so by the time I did, I was ready. And there was a point during this job search where my husband, who never gets irritated with me, became very irritated with me and said, Elizabeth, you really need to go read your second book, I Quit. And so ironically and sheepishly, I share all this with you. I did. I got up at 5 a.m. I went into my own office and I opened up my own book. And I literally read it. And I was like, oh, I know how to do this. Oh, it's just a process. Oh, and I read it for probably, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. I put it down. And then I instantly understood my job search and how I had to, where I needed to be. This slide will kind of give you some idea about what to look out for. So what you can expect is lots of opportunities in general. LinkedIn by far has the best if you buy the premium brand. There are niche websites you can look at as well if you're looking for remote work or tech work. But you're going to find a lot of postings. There's no doubt about that. You're going to get a lot of recruiters calling you. Often they're going to be calling for the wrong level of job, doesn't pay enough, not what you want. That's okay. You're going to see the phone ringing off the hook. So your problem is not going to be calls or calls back. Your problem is going to be vetting. What company really has what you want? And the biggest place where people make mistake is not really thinking about what they want. And so all these phone calls come in and it feels really great. And then you have to make a decision, right? And you're not clear because you weren't clear when you began. So expect that. Expect a lot of, whether you're in your job 2 years or 10 years or 20 years, doesn't matter where you're leaving, expect a lot of activity around you. You're also going to be up against some steep talent pool. There's a lot of passive job seekers out there right now, more so than 6 months, 9 months ago. And so these are tenured people with really fancy resumes, kind of like what I had. And, they're going to be the top calls. There's no doubt about it. These people are coming out of very large companies, highly confidential, 10, 20 years, all levels. I put an article out on my LinkedIn a few weeks ago. We're seeing CIOs and CEOs leaving companies like crazy right now. We're talking the very big guys at the top in these large tech companies. They're leaving too. They're no different than us. So there's definitely some competition there, where 9 months ago, the feeling or the sense was there just isn't enough job seekers and there's just not enough. That's not the case anymore. You will have some competition there. You can expect multiple video interviews with different people, different levels. The horror story is you could end up on a Zoom call with 10 people and be doing an interview. Very hard to focus, hard to figure out who's talking, really hard to understand who's got the influential power on that call. Like, I'm seeing 10 people. Why are there 10 people on this call? And like, who do I really need to be winning over? That kind of stress. And then possibly, and this is highly possible, sloppy onboarding if you are a remote employee. That's why we're calling it the great onboarding, because that's what we're seeing. HR is really not equipped still for this. The IT infrastructure is there, but sloppy. Like, your laptop shows up, but it's not configured right. And you're literally a week or two, like, sitting there on the phone with help desk once or twice a day trying to sort it out. It can be very sloppy and very bumpy. Don't panic if that happens to you. HR is well aware. Your manager's well aware. Nobody's looking at you, angry at you that you're not being productive. They often know the bumps in their own system. So if you take another job and you experience that, just breathe into it. It will all work its way out. Next slide. More statistics here around who, like, if you apply to a job, who else is in that talent pool? That's what I'm trying to flag you to here. This is the statistic on Dallas and why they're looking. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study, 65% of people are looking for another job. And then when you really boil it down, 2 of every 3 people that you work with right now are trying to leave. So again, it's a new day. You still have to be competitive. You still have to be polished. You're not going to get you're not going to get calls just because you're, one of 5 candidates in the applicant tracking tool anymore. You're in there with others. And so I think that that's where it's changed again. Employers still don't have a ton of choice, but they have more than they did. And you have a little more competition than you did, like I said, than 6-9 months ago. Next slide. Okay, so here's the biggest mistakes that I see in my coaching practice as I'm working with clients right now. Clients don't need from me a full 2-month package. They do not typically need all of it, soup to nuts. They don't need a resume rewrite, a job search plan, lots of interview prep, managing their references. They don't need all that time with me anymore. What I tend to do with clients right now, or what they do need, is upfront, really sharp focus on what do you want. And I was in session with a client probably a year and a half ago or longer. And it was like a Saturday morning, and she had been with her employer for 8 years. And she still wasn't finding a job. And she had been with me like 6 to 8 months. She'd had a couple interviews, nothing really struck her. She got shot down a couple times. But I was just really feeling like not a lot of motivation in the search, right? And so as I was listening to her about the search, I said to her, Christina, what is it going to take for you to walk away? And she just stopped. And I said, come on, man, you've been there 8 years. What's it going to take for you to just be like, I'm done? And I bet you there's 3 things. Like, if these 3 things are in this other opportunity, I'm out of here. And I said, I would totally encourage you to get off the phone with me and write those down and be in a really quiet place. You don't want the TV running. You don't want family stuff going on. Go be quiet and really sort out what that is. And I'm going to warn you, it may or may not be money. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I did that for myself. And what I found was it wasn't money. And as I was writing down the things that had to be there in order for me to leave a place after 10 years, the number one thing that became so clear to me was it was all about the people that I worked with, not my boss, but the people that I worked around and with. And in a really great way, my husband explained it to me. He's like, you're not looking for a bigger house. You're looking for a better neighborhood. And it was totally true. And so money was at the very bottom, as was benefits. There was all these other things, but it literally boiled down to like 2 or 3 things. Career advancement was not one. Lots of things were not, I was not your typical job seeker. And I thought that was really interesting once I wrote it down, what it was. And it really came down to core values and the people I worked around and how they operated. And kind of specifically, like if I work for another company, am I on an email string with 15 other people copied? Because I don't want that kind of environment. There's no reason for that. You know, if I'm in another company, how do we treat each other when it's going bad? You know, when you're not going to make the deadline, when the project falls apart, when there's a screen vice president on the line. How do we, as a team, the people around me, how do we respond to that? How do we respond to each other? And for me personally, that was my number one driver. I was not willing to do, if you're going to pay me and have me go do good work, these are the hard stops. Like if it doesn't look better than this, I'm not going. Why would I go? I could just stay here and pull a paycheck and do that. So I think it's really important to understand very clearly what you want before you put that resume out there. And it's the number one thing I see where job seekers miss. They don't do it. They put their resume out there, the phone gets ringing, they're in some amount of pain, they want out of their employer, and now everything looks great. And they miss it. They miss the whole mark. Same thing with the 3 people that left companies last year. They wouldn't have left had they had done that work up front. Because what they found was it wasn't money. It wasn't, you know, literally $35,000, $40,000 more increases. It wasn't that. And so I would encourage anybody who's in search to really look at that. My book, I Quit, actually has a whole chapter on that, around committing to the search, committing to leaving, understanding what you want, and then you go out there. It's important, especially now, so that you don't get sold into an opportunity or a job that you're there 90 days and it's just more of the same or worse. Other people didn't really consider why they were leaving. My clients included friends of mine that made the job change. They didn't really look at why. What was their driver? Was it emotional? Was it money? What was it? Lifestyle? What was it? Their boss? You know, they never really looked at that. Some of my clients had very unfocused interviews. And what I mean by that is, once you really figure out these are the things that have to be there for me to take another job, you craft questions that you're going to ask an interviewer to uncover if it's the right environment for you or not. And that's key. It's really important. So if you figure out, you know, it's about how you're treated and behavior and cultural norms, you're creating interview questions that sound like, when it's a really bad day around here, what does it look like? How do people get promoted? And how do I know if I'm doing a good job or not? If I'm going to report to you and you're my boss, how do you like to receive information? Do you like me to call you? Do you want me to ping you on Teams? Do you like a standing meeting? These are all important things that could make or break you in terms of your happiness when you go with another employer. So your interviews have to be focused. And what I mean by that is you're not trying to sell them or show them all you have to offer. It's an equal exchange, and you're really there to vet them. They're going to vet you as a candidate. Why can't you vet them? You're really there to vet them in their environment and figure out if that's where you really want to take your skill set. And then the other thing that I see, not as common, but some of it is if you haven't been in a search for a long time, like you haven't looked at even 5 years, by now, your job search skills are pretty rusty because a lot of things have changed. But people, even like myself, hadn't been on the market in 10 years. I had to learn, like, where are the jobs posted now and what's hot and what's not. I knew some of it from coaching, but it's a whole different experience when you're doing it. And I think that's what's really changed in me is the coach became the client of the coach. I myself had the physical experience of the ups and downs of the job search and being able to pull it all into a process and actually live and do what I have coached for years. But once I had that experience, I will tell you my coaching now is deeper and more rich and definitely even more full of compassion and understanding because I've done it. And it takes a leap of faith to leave an employer. So I'll leave it at that. Next slide. Virtual interviews. This is just a quick slide. I'm sure all of you know this because we're all on Zoom meetings or Teams video meetings now. Just a quick slide around, if you're getting ready to interview, watch your background, be thoughtful about your background, be thoughtful about the lighting. Before I came on, we actually did a lighting adjustment here for me. Just making sure the dog isn't barking, although that's not the end of the world if the dog barks. But this is just a slide just to make sure that you're again, interview ready, not just like Teams meeting with your boss or your coworkers ready, but you're interview polished ready for virtual interviews. Next slide. So this is what I'm talking about, the ups and downs. And gosh, for more than 2 decades, I have coached clients, very smart, very logical, linear clients, probably like all of you here, around this, because the job search is a funny thing emotionally. And you can very easily ride the highs and lows that you're seeing on this graph right here. And even the piece of leaving can be this up and down. So I'll give you an example of that because I went through it for 6 months. I went through it. I'd get through the weekend, Monday morning, I would log in, I would feel refreshed for about 20 minutes. And then the email would start blowing up and Teams would start blowing up. And literally by 11 o'clock, 7 people had worn me out and I was getting irritated. And it definitely was not my coffee consumption. I mean, people were perpetually angry and combative and gunning at me. And by 11 o'clock, I was getting tired and beat up. I'd get through the day. Tuesday would be a little bit better. Couple of meetings, couple of nice things would happen. By the end of the day, I was still worn out. By Wednesday morning, I'm like, yeah, I really ought to start the search. Yeah, it's just, it's probably not, this isn't long-term for me. I got to look at this. I don't want to look at this. No, you really got to, so I start doing that sort of stuff, doubt, fear, anger. Why do I have to leave? Why can't they just, all this nonsense. Then Thursday, Friday, now I'm starting to work half a day, monitor half the day. I'm kind of half in, half out. I log off early, 3, 4 o'clock. I'm a ghost. You can't find me. I roll into the weekend and I start feeling better. And then it starts the next week. And I have not committed to the search. I have not put my resume out there. I just keep doing this up and down with the wave of the work piece because I don't want to look at it. I'm in total denial that I got to get out of there. I keep thinking it'll get better. There was many months where I thought I was the whole problem, that I just needed to keep fixing my attitude. And the workload just kept going up. It was all me. And I just kept trying to, carry the burden. It wasn't me. But because I didn't commit to the search, I kept going through this. And after you do that for 6 months, something breaks. And eventually what happened was I broke. And so it was a beautiful Thanksgiving weekend. I went out for a run and I sat down on a curb and I went into tears, and I am not a crier. So that's kind of a big deal. And when I came home, I walked in the side door and my husband said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not okay." And he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "The job is dying and ending and I have to let it go. And I don't know how to let it go because I've been there 10 years and I've won all the awards and I've done this and I've done that. I don't know how to let it go. And I'm afraid. What if there's no place else for me? What if I don't have all the bells and whistles that the next employer's looking for?" And he's like, "That's really funny. You sound just like your clients." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess I do." And he goes, "This is really funny because you're going to get to go do the experience that you've coached the game. Now you're going to get in the game with the pads on, running with the ball and getting tackled. This is interesting." And he wasn't, laughing at me or being mean, but he certainly saw the irony. And he goes, "I know you. You're going to spin and then you're going to pick yourself up pretty quickly as you, and then you're going to right yourself and go the right way." So I did. So he says to me, and I would say this to you, just write your resume, but don't put it out there. Promise me this weekend, Thanksgiving, you just write it. Don't put it out there, but now you know you have it. And he was right. So I wrote it, and it was the crappiest resume ever because I wasn't ready, but it was done. And I kind of had a little secret. So when I logged in on Monday, I had a little secret because I knew I was going to go at some point, right? And so that's like November, right? Like late November. So December, not good. You think it slows down? No. January, not good. Then a couple months later, something came to my attention that I won't share here that was going on internally in the company. There were some flags. There were some serious flags. And then it became like, now we're bumping up against my integrity. And now we're bumping up against, I can't just put up with this and turn a blind eye, because if I add my energy to something, I'm ultimately participating in it. And I can't do that. It's like engineers that say to me, I'll work anywhere, but I won't work anywhere where I'm developing something that's going to do mass destruction or war, or, and that's my hard stop. And something had transpired there. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this. I put my resume out. I'll tell you this. I put my resume out on April 3rd, and I had interviewed 6 of the largest companies out there because I read the book. And I ended up with an offer and a start date at the end of June. And I had 2 offers actually at the end of it. And so, but I had focus, right? I was like, go big or go home, look for very large companies, to figure out if they're where you're at. And when I talked to them, I figured out, I don't want to be a part of this. But this whole thing happened again. Ooh, I got a call. Nobody called. Ooh, this will work out. Visa called me. I'm going to have this great interview with Visa. Oh, great. So this up and down again during the process can happen as well. The best I can tell you, having gone through it, having coached it for a lot of years, as best as you possibly can to be stable and not ride these highs and lows, the better you will be able to make a decision, because you'll have clarity. And that clarity allows you the ability to be in the middle of the interview and catch the flags and be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to work for you. And I think that's really important, because these highs and lows take a toll on us as much as trying to hold down that job and stay there. So it's just something to consider, but also expect this. Expect that, you're going to have some ups and downs here in the search, and it's totally normal. But as best you can, try to see it for what it is and don't ride it emotionally. There's a job for you that no one else can have. There's a place for you that is yours that no one else can have. So all you can really do is have a good resume, do a good interview, and let it go. The rest will be what it will be. Control what you can and do a good job, and then leave it, because ultimately you don't really know what's the best job, and it's going to shift out the way it's going to shift out. And that's what stops some of this up and down, up and down, up and down. Next slide. And this is just a little idea. You certainly don't have to act on it. You're all very bright people. A coach might be worth a consideration if you want an impartial party, if you want somebody that helps you with goals. I had somebody call me the other day. They're like, I just want an accountability partner. I could probably do this. I just need somebody for that more than anything. But getting that impartial party that knows the market might be a good thing for you if you're in a search. You can certainly do it based right off of this webinar. I've really shared with you everything I can and everything that you would need to know, that you could be very successful in not just getting the next job, but having one that really makes you happy. Next slide. These are my sources. I wanted to give all of you these in case you want to check them out. And next slide. And that is a shameless plug for my book. I always offer this, especially with IEEE. I've worked with this organization so long. If you want to set up a 15-minute session with me, just have me do a resume review for you or take a look at it. If you've got like 1 or 2 questions about the search, I'm more than happy to give that to you. Join me on LinkedIn, send me an invite. Please say that you saw me here, or go to my site at Lyonsology, and you'll find my email address there too. And just shoot me a note and we can set up a time to talk about your search if that's concerning to you, or you just want somebody else to look at it. I had somebody come through this group 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nice guy, great background. And I gave him some resume feedback and he tweaked it and he sent it to me again. I'm like, that's perfect. Go try that. And I'm sure he'll land. I hope he's listening and I wish him well. But I'm always willing to do that for IEEE members. If you're interested in the coaching, great, but it's certainly not, it's not important either way. I'm happy to support you in this journey. And if all else fails, I don't know, read my book. I did, and it worked out great for me. I ended up with a huge increase and a global team. And I mean, it's crazy what I'm doing now. And honestly, I didn't want that. I didn't want that job. I didn't want anything about that. What I did want was the company and the energy and what they had to offer. And I had 2 offers, and I just kept going back to this one because there was something about the direction they were going and their moral compass. And boy, I have been right. I've been there not quite a year. I got a call this morning from a friend of mine in the payment space, and she's like, how are you doing? How are you? And I said, I'm just so happy. I just love work. It's just a great place. It's a great fit. You know, I went through the grind for a few months, but it's really more than I ever thought it would be. And again, I have to say, have clarity, know what you want, hold out for it, and be true to yourself, or don't move. Don't take that leap. That is something I would tell anybody. And then remember that you're a process. You're not a product. You're not, a box of cereal on a shelf that we're trying to sell to somebody. You're a process. And this is a process too. And to be gentle with yourself during the search, because there's going to be days where you're just not going to like it. I'm just going to tell you, you're just not going to like it. And I remember one day during the search, I was really upset about something. And I was on some rant. My husband was listening, and he said something that took me back. He said, "Oh, you're just not getting what you want." And oh yeah, I guess that's what it is. There's my ego, right? Yeah, it's just not moving as fast as I want. It's just whatever it is. There's going to be days like that, and to try not to ride those. Next slide. I think that's it. I think that's kind of where we end here. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Here you are.
Presentation, Elizabeth. So folks, we will now open up the floor for questions from our audience. Go ahead and ask your questions in the comments section, and we'll load them on onto the stream for Elizabeth to answer. Elizabeth, we have our first question. Timothy asks, other than money, what are some of the top things you see as reasons for people searching?
The number one thing right now, and if you look at any study and any statistics, the number one thing is they're looking for remote. Number one, money's maybe 2 or 3. It's really remote opportunities, particularly when you look at tech, IT, engineering, those jobs, or jobs where they already did work remote a couple of days a week. Now they want to work full remote.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even seen that from a lot of my own acquaintances as well. A lot of them are limited from going out these days, so they're definitely looking for something that's more manageable. Thank you. This next question, Angelo asks, what are the tactics to prevail among the candidates in this period of increased offer of workers? And what can make you different from all the others, presuming you have the same motivations?
Yeah, Angela, that's a great question. And so I'll share with you what I did in my search. And I don't know if this applies to you or not, but because I had not looked for another job in a decade, when I got immediately on the phone with the recruiter, the first thing I said to them was, as you can see from my resume, I haven't done this in a really long time. And I'll give you my best here, and you're free to ask me any questions. And I just want to thank you for being patient with me and for calling me and for being graceful with me. And so what I was saying in a nice way was a couple of things. One is I'm a select candidate. I'm not talking to everybody. I'm making a bold statement. I'm getting out of my employer. You probably should want me. So that's kind of how, it's like you want what you can't have. And then the other part was I was really recognizing, and frankly, I was trying to get them to look at my resume and understand what they had in front of them. And, and to thank them for their time. And every single one of them was really gentle with me. And it made me human. And they even said that. They were like, oh, this has really been a nice interview for me, and because I had this human, vulnerable element, right? And so I'll throw that out there. That clearly made me a different candidate. Was to say, I'm human, I'm vulnerable. And then I had a substantive story why I was leaving. Because that's always the question we have. I mean, do you have any idea how many thousands of people I've interviewed in my time? Like, we're always like wondering, like, yeah, what's the story? Why are you leaving? And then it's like, well, what's the real story, right? I had a very substantive story without saying anything negative about my employer whatsoever. I walked them all the way through my career path. The other thing that made me very different, and I'll share with you, it may not be your style, but I drove the interview. So when I got on that phone, boom, I was out of the gate with, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I drove it. They didn't drive me. I kind of drove that process initially. You know what I mean? And that made it a different interview right there. But I was comfortable doing that. And that also made me a very different candidate. It was clear I wasn't shy. It was clear I wasn't like the other ones they would talk to. So if you have just I had like the same thing I said, the first 30 seconds, I had the same thing I said with every interview. It was the same thing. I wrote it down in front of me. And so I could cue myself when I was on the phone. But I had it. I had why I was leaving. I had thank you very much down pat. And I went from there. That got me from first interview to second.
Fantastic. Thank you. Angelo, I hope that answered your question. This next question, Yahya, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And congratulations, by the way. Yahya says, I'm going to graduate in 2 months from college. Any advice about searching for the first job? I don't have any experience in my field because I didn't have any internship.
Yeah, I don't specialize in new grads. I don't know a lot about that. It's just not my field. What I have seen, it's dated information, frankly. A lot of legwork and who you know helping you get into other companies. You definitely want an internship. I would say just, what I've known is people who had kids that went through school and now they're looking online. But I mean, I'm not really familiar and you're not my typical client or not. I don't really know how to respond here because this is not my place of expertise. But I did see what was successful was, if your parent's friend works at Nokia and they have an internship, you apply online, that person might be able to give you a plug in email and maybe you get the interview kind of thing.
Thank you. This next question, sorry, that's not a question. Our next, one of our audience members asks, would love some advice on getting a mentor. I'm still in school, but would really love to work alongside a mentor.
Okay, there's a lot of confusion out there between a mentor and a coach. Okay, so and then what does a mentor mean to you, right? A mentor could be, it could be your neighbor that's an engineer in a particular field. And it's a very informal conversation. And I think it's, we've wrapped this word mentor around and kicked it around for so many years that it also gets blurred in with what's a coach. A mentor could be somebody that you currently work with. A mentor could be somebody that is already in the field. I would caution you when to walk up to say to somebody, would you be my mentor? That's a heavy ask for somebody else. Mentors come organically. They're people that you choose that you admire, but I would say have discernment, great discernment in who you decide is your mentor and knowing that they will change. Your mentor today may not be your mentor in 5 years. A coach is somebody that you put an investment into that will help you to get from point A to point B. Whether it's you want to get into manager job and you can't get there, you're a director and you want to go to VP. That's who my clients are, right? Maybe they have a team and they've got to bring their team from good to great. That could be my client, or a job search client, right? That's a coach. That's very different. There's a process. There's something that they're going through, from A to B to get them to goal. That's different than a mentor. So I want to explain the difference between the two. But in terms of, how do you find one? You already know. Just look around. Now, if you look around, you can't find one. I would suggest you join some professional groups. IEEE is a great group. Get to know some peers or some people that are in the same field of you or in different fields. There's lots of places to find mentors. Mentors are just people that you admire that you're trying to learn from professionally.
Great insight. Thank you for the clarification. This next question, Barry asks, any advice for late career unemployed with outdated skills?
Yeah, that's going to be tough, but it's not impossible. If you are not employed, you have time. And if you need current skills, the easiest, quickest way in tech or engineering is to get some certifications and to kind of bone up on those. That's what I would say if you want to continue working. Part of this great resignation, which we're not calling it that anymore, is you're seeing a lot of people retire. And so if that's an option for you, maybe you retire and you go off and you do something else part-time, to bridge the gap financially, or just to keep you, cutting current edge, keep the brain waves going, keep you, excited about something. So that might be the other opportunity. But if you're not employed, you have time and you're concerned about the skills being old, quickest way to go about that is certifications.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mohammed asks, what is your recommendation on gathering, analyzing, and on comparing data on current salaries when negotiating the salary?
Gathering, analyzing, and comparing data on current salaries when negotiating the salary. Okay, so let's have the salary discussion. I bet you can find this exact same response in 10 other clips with the IEEE. So here it goes. Skill set and salary is a band. Okay, so it's a title band. Say you're a manager of infrastructure engineering. You're a manager level. You're probably paid $120 to $130 with a bonus. Anywhere you go, it doesn't matter if you're at Facebook or if you're at a mid-sized company. Smaller companies are going to pay a little less, but it's a band. And so that would be the first thing that you have to look at. Then you look at, so forget the company. I want you to forget your search, forget your company, forget your negotiations, because it really doesn't matter. The skill pays what it pays. Then you have, where do you fall in that? So are you a manager level, or have you been a manager, but maybe your skill set now, you've worked so long, you've done so much, you really qualify for director. And you're going to know if you qualify for director by reading ads. And you're going to look at the qualifications of the job ad, nowhere else. That, the 4 paragraphs, it tells all about him, it tells about you. No, go right to the qualifications. It'll say minimum 15 years experience. Oh, I have that. Minimum, these infrastructure technologies is what you need to know. Network, systems, a little bit of DevOps, this, that, the other, it'll say minimum 5 years of that. Oh, I have that. Minimum 3 years of this, minimum 2 years people leading skills. And you're like, I have this, so I would qualify for director. That's what you would apply to. So we look at it all wrong. We look at it like, well, how much can I make? It doesn't matter. What matters is, what is the job band you're looking at? What does it pay? But what are your qualifications now? And when you reframe it in that, you're gonna figure out pretty quickly where you can get to.
Great, thank you, Mohammed. I hope that answered your question. This next question, Joseph asks, how do you, or is it possible to turn interviews into a two-way conversation when the interview questions are pre-canned, rapid fire, and they only give you a minute at the end?
Yes. Here it is. You got a pen? This is really good. Write this down. They're going to ask you this question, whatever it is. You got 1 minute. You answer them. And at the end, you say, that sounds really important to you. Why is that? That's magic. That is it. Those 3 words. Why is that? It makes them stop. It makes them slow down. It evokes a response back. But you're going to really figure out, what's the danger. Are you replacing Bob, and Bob wasn't competent and they're really ticked off, or Bob left and left a mess? And so when you say, why is that? It's going to make them say something like, well, we don't have the skill set in-house, or we're looking for this and that. Then here's the reason why. Now you're going to get to the ugly. And we want you to get to the ugly and not all the great things about the job, because then you can decide if you want to be there or not. So that's how you flip it. So you have the energy back, and now you're in an equal playing field. And even if you lock up in interviews, like sometimes, especially engineers that I've coached, they get super nervous about I feel like they're bombarding me, right? And in order to slow it down, if you throw out, why is that? And they're answering it and you can't even hear them because you're trying to calm down, it's okay. Because it'll stop that pattern in them. So try that.
It's definitely interesting. Just that one small question.
Yep.
Thank you. Greg asks, Advice for a highly experienced engineer who's been out of the technical workplace 5 to 6 years, but now ready to jump back in part-time or work from home?
Yeah, certifications. It's the only way you're going to bridge it. It's the only way that you're going to show that you're current and you still have some technical chops. If you did anything on the side slightly relevant to your old field, like I'm just making this up, but maybe you built an app, or maybe you taught college, with IT people, something relevant to show what you did the last 5-6 years. That would be the way to go. Or pull that certification, depending on what work you're in. Now you're going to show that you're engaged and you're current. And that's really the quickest, easiest way without knowing your title and your old industry and all that. That's the best I can kind of answer this.
Great, thank you. This next question, I think, is something a lot of people have faced with, especially in the past couple years. Alex asks or says, "I'm looking for a new job for geographical reasons, to be closer to family. How do you leave a company that you like working for and search for jobs while still working for them?"
Well, we're all doing that, Alex, right? Because I told you 50% of people are doing that. So here's what I did. I'll tell you what I tell clients, and I'll tell you what I do. So what I tell clients that are in that situation is this: minimally, you have to commit to 2 to 3 times a week. You have to commit to 2 to 3 times that you're going to do the search. And your search is going to be about an hour and a half or so. That's it. So I would look like Wednesday and maybe Sunday, or Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, but at least twice a week. I would always suggest Wednesday and like Saturday or Sunday, and do the search and knock it out. If you don't, what happens is the inconsistency causes inconsistency in the search. So let's say that you applied at 5 jobs on Wednesday and 2 jobs on Saturday, and the next week you get all these calls. You're doing all these interviews. You don't do any of the search. It dries up. So I get a lot of calls about it dried up. I'm like, well, it didn't dry up. You dried up. So it's all about your focus. And as much as you put into this it's this wave you put out that the wave comes back in. So consistency is your key. Twice a week will get you there for sure. Definitely in this market, twice a week will get you there. Me, being the overachiever, and when I finally was like, I got to get out of here, that was it, man. I had to get out of there. And so when I did that, for me personally, I got up at 4:45 every morning, and I did my search from 4:45 until 6:30 or 7. But I got to tell you, by the time I logged in at 8:30, I felt great. I felt like I had a dirty little secret, like for real. And I did. And so it was great. So you'd call, yell, whatever didn't matter to me. I just got off a job search. I just saw Goldman Sachs is hiring, and Visa's hiring, and US Bank is hiring. And I'm like, wow, whatever. Yell all you want. I'm feeling great, man. That's powerful. It's a very powerful thing. So keep that in mind. If you are working, you could get up and do that. Now, I was ungodly consistent. And I even have my spreadsheet from my search. And I can tell you exactly how many I applied to, exactly how many called back, and exactly how many went to second interview and offer. And I went from April 3rd and was working at the new employer on June 22nd. It could happen that fast. Again, be careful, because you got to be ready. But if you put that effort in this market, it could look like that. Depends on what you want, your time, and all that. I wasn't any more than an hour and a half. I was in and out, posted my applications, and, got a shower, logged in. It was pretty seamless. But there's 2 ways to go with that, and that's what I would say there.
Fantastic, thank you, and thanks for the question, Alex. Folks, I'm still seeing a lot of questions. We'll definitely try and get to your questions as many as we can. Jennifer asks, if now is a time where many people are looking and a recession is impending, is there a time frame which we should limit ourselves to make sure we don't get trapped?
Yeah, that's a good point. On the other webinar I did, and clients that I'm working with right now. So here's the goal, Jennifer, and your brilliant question. It's really important. You want to land that job soon. Like I would say, you want to be at offer within we're in first quarter in February. So I would really say if you could land an offer by early second quarter or so, by June, you got to be at offer, because once you take that new job, now you've got to learn them. Now you got to learn their process. Now you got to do all of that, right? You probably made a significant increase. I think anybody on this call is going to make a significant increase. And when I say significant, I'm talking about $25,000 or north of that. Now you're getting to change your life money. Like, for real, this is change your life money. The problem is now you've been with this employer 3 months, 6 months, less than a year, recession happens. Well, you were the last one in, and you'll be the first one out the door if you don't have some accomplishments, right? And now you've also gotten used to that money. That can be a problem. So think about that. If you make a big increase, be careful. Where is it going? Maybe you need to rat hole some of it to get some stability within the job and to see how a recession is going to hit that industry and that company. The best case scenario is that you land the next offer fairly quickly, but it's what you want. Don't jump and just grab something, grab it. But then you want to be there long enough to have some accomplishments and hopefully get through a 1-year review cycle. Because if you do get bounced out, you can say you did something and you've got something else to show.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thanks for the question, Jennifer. This next question might be a little vague, but what's the average time for a remote job search? So I guess what have you seen from potential job seekers? How long it's taken for them to find a remote job?
It's what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. It goes back to consistency and focus. If you're just looking to pull an offer, depending on your level, I mean, it also depends on your skill set, right? Like, I worked with somebody that was a director and redid her resume and redid everything and, just finished her up. But, director level jobs, that could be 3 months, right? To offer, even in this market, it could be 2 to 3 months. It's probably not going to be longer than that for sure. It depends on the title and the level, like CIOs, that could be a little longer of a search, especially if it's remote. So it depends on the title, but it's really about what you put into it is as quick as it'll go.
Great, thank you. This next question, Jesse asks, what would be the best way to connect with recruiters in conversations on LinkedIn? And how can we turn the conversation into interviews?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's also always comes down to attitude and approach. So think about how you're approaching them, right? Are you just trying to get something out of them? Because they feel that even if they need your skill set, they feel that. So I think how you approach them is going to be really important, and how you can turn conversations into interviews. Flat out ask them. I mean, you're asking me, ask them. Like, could we set up a time for a call? ? I'm available Tuesday and Wednesday between 1 and 3 Central. How can we turn this online conversation into an interview? Ask them. They'll tell you, or they'll ghost you. They'll either tell you or ghost you.
Fantastic. Thank you. This next question, one of our viewers asks, are there good jobs available where the primary focus is software development, limited amount of time on other items and not management? Have you seen a whole lot of those kinds of positions open lately?
Yeah, especially when you get into certain technical stacks. I've seen it. Mid-level, like 5 to 7 years. Yep, I've seen it. So yeah, there is. You definitely can be hands-on and technical and not in leadership at all and find that kind of work and find it remote even.
Great, thank you. So folks, we have time for few more questions. Barry asks, so you spoke of certifications before. For an older SW engineer, what would you suggest?
I'd have to see your resume and see the industries you came out of to really comment on that, because I don't know. I don't know where you're light and where you're heavy. I mean, maybe you need to learn something about Java. Maybe you need to learn something about DevOps. Maybe you need to learn about automation. Maybe, I don't know. I'd have to see your resume to really comment on that.
Yeah, so Barry, you can reach out to Elizabeth personally as well, since her contact information has been provided on the screen. This next question, if you're negotiating a promotion at your current workplace, would you be better positioned with an outside job offer in hand, I guess, as leverage?
Yeah, don't do that. I mean, you wouldn't want that done to you, would you? Doesn't that feel dirty? It should feel dirty. It's really crappy too, because you're going to have to actually print that offer letter or somehow have a copy of that and then walk that in and be like, ABC is offering me this. This company is offering this. And now when the recession happens, or in the next team meeting, or next Monday, your boss knows that you're not loyal and that you'll move for more money. And so now you're kind of, your name's on a list. There's no nice way to say this to you, Andrew. Your name's on a list. And so when recession comes up, or the next promotion comes up, or the next whatever, you think you held them hostage. You might not have. Even in this market, I'd be careful. Because if you're already angry enough and disgruntled to do that, why don't you just leave? I mean, it's a kind of a fair question, right? And so you're going to have to literally produce that number. And let me tell you, that's going to go to HR. They already have an attrition problem. They already have an attrition problem of 15% or north of that. You're not the only one in your company that's doing that. There's lots of people doing that. But how you, it's never what happened, it's how it's handled. And if you
Oh, folks, I think we've lost Elizabeth. 1 second. So, folks, unfortunately, it looks like we may have had some technical difficulties, but I think we're just going to have to cut it off here. We have actually run out of time, so thank you so much for tuning in today and for your great questions for our audience. Um, if you have any more questions, you can reach out to Elizabeth personally. Her information has been provided on the screen again. So, as we've said, as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, IEEE USA's goal is to create programming that's valuable, relevant, and of interest to you. So please respond to this short survey that we send out if you happen to get it, because we definitely appreciate your feedback. Check back daily on our social media for future live stream updates, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day.